Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. This podcast has evolved over the 5+ years since it first launched. From now on, I'm going to be talking about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. And also mindset, of course, but mindset of all kinds, not just business mindset. I think. Things are changing for me, as you may have noticed if you've been following me online or listening to this podcast, so anything goes here. I hope you stay along for the ride. Thank you so much for joining us today, and now let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 337. This is your host, Holly Worton, and I'm back with another solo episode. Today, I'm going to talk about what to do when you don't like yourself. Now, oftentimes, podcast topics are based on something that I've been thinking about or working on in my own life. This time, it was different. It was a little weird. I'd just gone to bed. This was a couple weeks ago, and I was settling in when the actual exact title for this episode just popped into my mind, and I actually got up and wrote it down because I didn't want to lose it, because while I'm not going through this currently, this is definitely something that I've experienced in the past. So I think this is a really timely topic for this episode because we're at a new year and it's a great time to start thinking about what we want in our lives, what we want to change in our lives, and how we want to do things differently. Of course, we can do that any day of the year, but this is a time when people are traditionally thinking about this kind of thing and talking about this kind of thing and making New Year's resolutions and goals and plans and things. So for starters, Happy New Year, Happy 2020, Happy New Decade. And I wanted to start out by saying, if you don't like yourself, I'm really, really sorry about that. I know how this feels. It is so shitty. But there's help. Like, you can help yourself. You can get help. There are so many easy things you can do. So today, what are we going to talk about? I'm going to talk about what self-hatred is, kind of break it down into little bits and pieces. We're going to talk about why we hate ourselves. Why do we dislike ourselves? I'm going to discuss the effects that self-hatred has on our lives, or self-dislike. I'm going to talk about how to stop hating yourself and start liking yourself, and practical things you can do today. And finally, I'm going to cover how you can create your own personal emergency toolkit for when you're feeling down. So let's get started. What is self-hatred or self-dislike? Self-hatred, it's just it feels icky to say it. Like, it's such a sad concept. And I know I have definitely been in this place before. I mean, I remember when I was a teenager, just wishing I were anything but who I was, and fantasizing about being someone else, and like having these like extended daydreams about me living this other life as this other person that was just so much better than me. Because at the time, my self-esteem, self-worth was really low, and it continued to be low for a great deal of my life. And I think that's been kind of my default coping mechanism for much of my life. Like, when I was down, when I was feeling low, when I was feeling like I really hated myself or disliked myself, my coping mechanism was always to fantasize about me having this fantastic life as this other person. Of course, the person had my name, it was like it was a better version of me. And I would get into these really elaborate kind of daydreams, like extended daydreams. Probably could have written a whole novel about this other Holly, because it just felt so crappy to be me. And, I turned that around through years and years of working with myself on stuff that I didn't like, but for a long time it felt like crap. So, what is self-hatred or self-dislike? In my opinion, self-hatred is a combination of low self-worth, low self-esteem, low or non-existent self-trust, a lack of self-love, lack of self-acceptance, lack of self-confidence, and just not valuing yourself. And all of this kind of leads to not liking you as a person. There are people in our lives that we like, there are people that we don't like, but when one of the people that you don't like is yourself, that's really hard to deal with. Because you can't get rid of yourself. Except, obviously, suicide, which I don't recommend. And if you are in any way thinking about that, fantasizing about that, planning it, please stop this podcast now and get professional help. Get help however you can, wherever you can. If you think you can't afford it, there are free services out there. Get help. So if things are so bad that you're thinking about that, again, get help. If they're not, good, but you're still not in a great place. So it's worth kind of picking apart your own personal flavor of self-hatred or self-dislike and working on it yourself. Because again, this is absolutely something that you can turn around. It's nothing more than a poor relationship with yourself. But because you are with yourself 24/7, it feels like crap because, again, you can't get rid of yourself. But you can change yourself. You can change the things that you don't like about yourself. And you can change the way you see yourself, the way you value yourself. And you can eventually like yourself and love yourself. So this is something that takes work, like any relationship. I'm sure you're aware that any kind of relationship in your life, whether it's friends, family, partner, it takes work. It doesn't have to be hard work. It can be easy work, but it takes some effort. So, in the same way that you invest time and effort into your relationships with other people, if you want to have a good relationship with yourself, and that includes letting go of self-hatred and starting to like yourself, you've got to cultivate that relationship with yourself. And realize that just because you are you and you are yourself doesn't mean that you automatically should have a good relationship with yourself. Lots of people do not have a good relationship with yourself. And so I think it's important for me to point out that this is in no way another thing that you need to beat yourself up for. Like, this is very, very common. I think the vast majority of people have disliked or hated themselves at least once in their lives, if not for extended stretches of their lives, if not for all of their lives, or the vast majority of their lives. So this is common. It's not just you. And it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. And it doesn't mean, that's another thing you have to dislike yourself for. Just know that it's something that can be changed. It's a poor relationship with yourself, and it can be cultivated into a good relationship with yourself. Again, takes time and effort. So I think it's important to explore, why do we hate ourselves? Why do we dislike ourselves? And again, this comes from low self-worth, low self-esteem, low self-confidence. And where does that come from? It oftentimes comes from stuff that happened when we were little kids, as we were growing up. It can come from parents, family members, teachers, usually from authority figures in our lives. So you might have had a teacher that told you were stupid, or siblings that told you that, and, it kind of went beyond just regular sibling teasing. It really made you feel bad about yourself. Or it could come from your parents. But a lot of times when we're children, we hear these negative things about us, whether we hear them directly or we overhear adults talking about us, and we start to form a negative self-view. And we start to think, oh, there's something wrong with us. We're not good enough. We should be different, but we're not. We are who we are, so I guess we're awful people. And if we hear these things, that can spark a lot of negative self-talk, of just beating ourselves up internally. I'm so stupid. I can't do this. I'm always a failure. I'm not good at learning. I'm not good at school. I'm bad at sports, whatever. And we start beating ourselves up internally. And this has a really negative effect on our lives, because the more we dislike ourselves, the more we hate ourselves, the more we beat ourselves up inside, the more we cultivate this negative mind chatter, negative self-talk, it's like a downward spiral into just everything getting worse and worse and worse. And this is something that we need to recognize, and recognize that it's something that we can change. Because the more negative thoughts we have, and the more negative thoughts we have about ourselves, it's just going to make everything worse in our lives. We're just going to start taking actions that are worse and worse and worse, and end up in this downward spiral of negativity. Again, we can stop this pattern at any time. It takes work, it takes time, it takes effort. We can stop it at any time we want. Today, you can stop it today. So, how to stop hating yourself and how to start liking yourself. I think there are a lot of different things you can do, and I'm going to discuss, 10 or so different things. Maybe take notes as you're listening to this and see what kinds of things appeal to you, because not everything I talk about is going to appeal to you. The things that I mentioned might give you ideas for other things you can do. But even if there's only one thing that I talk about that you think, oh, I could do that, do it. Like, stop and do the things. Because if you keep on the track that you're on, if you keep on the path that you're on, again, you're in a downward spiral of negativity. What you need to do is stop and turn and make a different decision and take a different action. And that will start bringing things on the upward spiral that I'm always talking about. So, what are some things you can do to stop hating yourself and start liking yourself today, tomorrow, this week? Try to get a new perspective. So ask yourself, would you treat your best friend or your favorite family member the way you treat yourself? So when you think about how you beat yourself up internally, negative self-talk, telling yourself you're stupid, you're an idiot, would you say that to your best friend? Would you say that to your favorite sister or aunt or whatever? Probably not. And if you don't have a best friend or any friends that you consider good friends or favorite family members, if you don't really have that kind of support network, just ask yourself, do you like the way you're treating yourself? Do you like the way you're talking to yourself? Does it feel good? Probably not. Maybe do some journaling about that and do some reflecting on that and realize that you have been mistreating yourself. And you've been treating yourself in a way that you don't want to be treated. And think about also another way to just twist the perspective around this is if someone else treated you the way you're treating yourself, if your friend or family member or a random person said the things to you that you say to yourself or treated you the way you treat yourself, would that make you feel good? Would that make you feel bad? Would you say something to them about it? Would you protest? Oftentimes, people will say you are your worst enemy. And that's a time when you need to pay attention to why they said that. What are you doing to yourself? Because if you are your own worst enemy, that's not good. So think about the way you're treating yourself, and try to get that perspective that it's really not ideal to be treating yourself that way. And notice your negative self-talk. Write it down. This is the kind of thing that you could journal about, or if you're out and about, just send yourself an email, or whenever you hear yourself saying, oh, I'm stupid, I'm an idiot, write it down so that you can get it out of your head and onto paper or onto somewhere where you can see it. And then turn it around. Like, instead of believing this thing about yourself, or instead of saying this thing to yourself, what would you rather have instead? What would you rather believe instead? What would you rather say instead? And then maybe say that thing to yourself, the nice thing. And then the more you become aware of the negative self-talk, the easier it will be to let go of it. Because you will start to realize how often you are mistreating yourself internally, and it'll be easier to quit. And again, once you start to become aware of it, turn it around, make it positive, give it that twist of the thing you wish you heard or the thing you wish you said to yourself, that's going to get you in a different mindset all its own. Because it's going to get you from where you are, which is where you don't want to be, to the thing you want to have instead or where you want to be instead. So that can be really useful. Next, just be kind to yourself. When you realize you're beating yourself up, stop it. Quit. Stop. Force yourself to say something else. Force yourself to focus on something else. Stop and distract yourself with something else. Another thing you can do is to let go of perfectionism. Oftentimes when we hate ourselves or we dislike ourselves, we're comparing ourselves to others and we think everyone else is so perfect or certain people are so perfect and I'm not. I'm a loser. I'm terrible. I'm an idiot. Let go of perfectionism because there's no such thing as perfect. You're never going to be perfect. No one else is ever perfect. No one's perfect. There's no such thing. So just let go of striving for perfectionism. I think it's really important to, when we do things, to be the best we can be at the things that we're doing, to always do things as good as we can, but without expecting perfectionism. Next, let go of regret. Because you can't change the past. All you can do is learn from those experiences. So if you made decisions that you regret, maybe do some journaling about that again. Stop, think about what you did wrong, and I'm air quoting that. What you did that you didn't like, what was the outcome you didn't like? How would you have liked to handle that? So that if you're in a similar situation in the future, you know what you want to do instead. What would you rather do instead? How would you rather handle that situation if it comes up in the future? You can't change the past, but you can change things from today onward. So stop beating yourself up with the past and start learning from your mistakes or learning from the decisions that you weren't happy with so that you make different decisions in the future. Mistakes are just learning opportunities. If we allow them to be, if we stop and we analyze them and we think about what we would rather do in the future, they are learning experiences. Otherwise, they're just excuses for you to beat yourself up about. We absolutely can learn from our mistakes and we absolutely can learn from our failures, which I'm putting in air quotes because I don't believe in failure. I do believe that things that don't turn out right, that we often dub as failures, are just learning opportunities. I did this thing, I made this decision, I had a shitty outcome. I'm not going to do that again. Here's what I'm going to do instead. I'm going to make this different decision, take this different action, and do something differently. So failures, mistakes, not something you want to be regretting, but it is something that you want to learn from. So accept your failures, learn from your mistakes, and do things differently. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for your failures, your mistakes, your bad decisions, your whatevers. There is an kind of a process called Ho'oponopono, which I'm going to link to in the show notes, which is really easy to do. You might think it sounds silly when you do it, but it's a really easy way to forgive yourself and just keep doing it as much as you need to do it. Every time you feel like you're starting to beat yourself up over something, stop and do the Ho'oponopono thing. Again, I'm linking to that in the show notes. It's a thing that I've often mentioned. Try it, even if it sounds silly. Next, gratitude list. I know a lot of people resist gratitude lists. I don't do them all the time. I only do them once in a while. But if I'm feeling really shitty, that is one of the things that I will do, is make a gratitude list. In your journal or on a piece of paper, just write a list of 10 things you're grateful for every day. We all have things to be grateful for. You live in a house, you have food, you have a flushing toilet, which a lot of people don't have. You have access to clean water. There are so many things that you have. Even if you feel like your life is the absolute shit, there are things you can be grateful for. And if you resist this, I don't know, just try doing it one day and see how it makes you feel. And pay attention to how you feel before doing the gratitude list and how you feel after. This is something that really turns things around for me when I'm not feeling well emotionally. So make a list of things that you're grateful for. Finally, keep like a self-worth folder. So this could be something on your computer or a folder in your inbox of nice emails or comments from people or testimonials or screenshots of social media. If people saying nice things to you or saying nice things about you, you can print it and put it in your journal or have a special notebook for it. But I think it's really useful to have a folder where you have just nice things that people say about you. Or you could put it in Evernote, have like an Evernote notebook of nice things. Sometimes when it's hard for us to find kind words for ourselves, it can be useful to read nice things that other people have said about us. And maybe you're thinking, oh, but no one ever says nice things about me. I'm sure you've got something somewhere, even if it's just one thing, a card your grandmother sent you, I don't know. Get it out and look at it, reread it, and that can help turn things around. So these are all little things. Try one, try them all. See what works for you. You don't have to do all these things every day. You probably won't have time to do all these things every day. I don't think anyone would. But try doing something every day, even if it's 5 minutes. Do you have 5 minutes? Everyone has 5 minutes free. Write a gratitude list in 5 minutes. You could write 3 things, 5 things. Just spend a little bit of time every day trying to turn this around. The next thing that I think is really big, and I talk about this a lot, I will link to the other episodes I've talked about self-knowledge, but knowing yourself is a really good way. And I think this is kind of the core way of moving from self-hatred to self-like is to know yourself. And I know this may sound counterintuitive because if you don't like yourself, then why would you want to spend time getting to know this person that you don't like? Who the hell does that? But no one is 100% good or 100% bad. You have good qualities as well as qualities you don't like. And I think that it can be really helpful to just get clear on who you are. So maybe make a list of what are your good qualities. Maybe you think you don't have any good qualities. I don't know. Get really basic. Like, I'm good at personal hygiene. I take a shower every day. I'm a good friend. I'm very loyal to people. I'm good with my dog. I don't know. Things like that. Like, go for whatever you can go for. Maybe it's just one thing. Maybe you can only think of one thing. Spend the time. Like, if you're resistant to this, like, you have at least one good quality. So, like, spend the time thinking about it. And just dedicating the time to this again can start to turn things around. And as you're looking for good qualities, your mind, if it's in a shitty place, might just vomit up all the negative stuff that you've been used to hearing about yourself. And that's where I think you need to just accept yourself as you are now. This is who you are today, right now, just as you are. Today in this moment. Like 5 minutes from now, you could start making changes to change yourself. So this is just who you are right now. Like, this is all changeable. And that leads me to the next point, is to figure out what you can change and do it. So maybe you don't like that you're lazy. Okay, what does that mean? Maybe to you, being lazy means you get up really late, you don't have a job, you just sit around the house, you play games all the time. I don't know. Random example. Okay, so what can you change about that? Get up earlier. So if you're used to getting up, I don't know, afternoon, 1 o'clock, tomorrow get up at noon. The next day, get up at 11. The following day, get up at 10. Or maybe if that's too much of a stretch, get up at 12:30, 12, 11:30, 11. Like, bump up the increments by 15 minutes, half hour, an hour, whatever, so that you can little by little start to change your habits. And then just start doing things differently. Instead of playing games, maybe go for a walk around the block. I don't know. Any little tiny thing you can do to change your habits and routines that aren't making you happy will start shaking things up and make it easier for you to become the person that you like. And I talk a lot about self-development and personal development and changing. This doesn't mean that you are inherently bad or wrong. What this episode is about is you, us, anyone, having a poor relationship with ourselves and not liking ourselves. The fact that you don't like yourself does not mean that you are inherently bad. It just means you don't like yourself. So we're talking about changing things so that you do like yourself. And again, focus on the things that you do well. Make a list of your skills and your experience and your talents and focus on things. Just knowing the stuff that you do well can help you start to value who you are and start to increase your sense of self-worth. And finally, I think it's important to have an emergency toolkit for when you're in a really bad place and you're really feeling like shit about yourself. Again, pick and choose from these things. Some of these things will appeal to you, some of them won't. Make a list, but literally make a list so that when you're feeling down and you're feeling shitty, you have this list to refer to. So one thing you could do is to get outdoors. Go for a walk around the block, go for a walk in nature, go to a park, go out in your garden, get outside, get in the fresh air. But getting out of your house into a radically different environment, which is outdoors, that can make a big difference in itself. That can start to shift your mood. You can write in your journal. However, maybe be careful about this. Maybe write a letter or write something on a piece of paper and burn it instead. I don't know, because I have found that journal writing can be really useful. But if I'm in a really bad place, it can make things worse. It just kind of gets me ingrained in that downward spiral. I remember years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I was in the habit of doing the morning pages practice, where you write 3 A4 or letter-sized pages a day. Just kind of a mind dump of all the stuff that's going on in your head first thing in the morning. And I was not in a good space for that year that I was doing those. And I've actually since thrown all of those journals away because it was just so negative and awful. And it really kind of kept me in that downward spiral of crap, of feeling bad about myself. So be careful if you're going to do journaling. If you want to write in your journal, maybe write 1 page of just mind dump, and then from there, turn it around with gratitude exercises and more positive, enhancing things. Be very mindful of how you journal when you're not feeling well. Get some exercise. Like I said, go for a walk, go to the gym, move your body, do some yoga at home, turn on a YouTube video for exercise or yoga or stretching or something. But moving your body can actually really help change your state of mind. Have a happy music playlist of songs that make you feel good, of songs that lift you up. Go on Spotify and look for one. But have music that you know will lift you up and change your state of mind. Have some go-to websites that make you laugh. I remember years ago, this must have been like 12 or 13 years ago, there were certain websites that I really liked that just made me laugh or made me feel good. And so I would go to them when I was feeling down. So have those websites that you know can make you laugh. Self-care, take a bath, take a shower, read a book, have just little things you enjoy doing that make you feel better about yourself, that make you feel like you're caring for yourself. Another thing you can do is learn something new. So either read a book or watch a video that teaches you something on YouTube, or do an online course, or sometimes learning something new can not only distract us from how crappy we're feeling, but it helps us learn, it helps us grow, it helps us change. So that can help stimulate change in other areas of our lives. And finally, get support, get help from others, friends, family, professional help. Get help when you need it. And again, professional help doesn't need to cost money. There are free resources out there. Get help when you need it. But I hope that you write down these things, these ideas for your emergency toolkit to remind yourself, because sometimes when we're feeling really, really down, it's like we forget the little things we can do to change how we feel about ourselves, to change how we like ourselves. And that can help turn things around. So I hope you found this useful. I think that moving from self-hatred to self-love is a long journey. It doesn't have to be a long journey, but it's a journey that takes time and effort and attention, and you've got to want to do it, obviously. But I think it starts with just one step. Just doing one thing differently, and then doing one different thing every day, or one new thing every day. Or doing one good thing that makes you feel good every day. It doesn't have to be something different every day, but doing something different from what you're doing now. That will help turn things around, and that will help you to start realize that you are worthy And it will start to boost your self-worth. It will boost your self-esteem. It will help you trust yourself. It will help you develop that sense of self-acceptance, self-confidence, and eventually self-love. And then your life is going to be totally different than how it is today. But it starts with one step. If this sounds too big for you, just pick one thing and do it. And if you think you don't have time, trust me, you've got 5 minutes. So, as always, I hope you found this episode interesting and useful. Please drop me a line. Let me know what you thought about this week's episode. You can email me at holly@hollyworton.com or find me online and get in touch there. I would also love for you to join me on Patreon. So if you find this podcast useful, if you feel like it's helpful in any way, I would love for you to support me on Patreon. If you head over to patreon.com/HollyWharton, you can join there from just $1 a month on up, whatever works for you. And finally, thank you so much for listening. Again, Happy New Year, Happy 2020, Happy New Decade. Please, if you're not in a good place, take one new action today to start turning things around. If it's the end of the day, if you're about to go to bed, stop, take 5 minutes, and write down 3 things that you're grateful for. That's the easiest way to start. Or pick anything else from this list. So, thank you for listening. Happy New Year. And remember to visit hollyworton.com/337 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollyworton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.